Hey everyone, welcome. Hey, this is a podcast that explores various aspects of addiction, potentially focusing on personal stories of recovery, scientific perspective, society and societal impacts, and related topics. This podcast often features discussion with experts, individuals in recovery, therapists, and advocates to offer insights and support to those affected by addiction or seeking more information about it. Welcome to another episode of The Other Side of Addiction. I'm your host, Al Richards, and today with my lovely friend and the hotness of Leta Greene is going to be on the show today, and we're going to talk about resilience, the power of choices. Take two.
Right? Because our first episode was so awesome, but there were for some reason it didn't come out, but it was awesome. So we're just gonna do awesome again today.
Yeah, and it was. I mean, that was an amazing show, and but this one is going to be more amazing. We'll just put
It's
it
gonna be
that way.
even better. It's gonna be
I
even
lo-
better because you
Yeah.
didn't know I was so amazing then. You just knew me as Hotness.
That's it. I've always known you as hotness from the first time that I met you.
Well, it is how I introduce myself now because I wrote a book called How to Embrace Your Inner Hotness. And I would always refer to everything that's poopy. So those listening in, you'll now know my language. Poopy is things that are bad, and hot, not as in like Hilton, that girl who's like, that's so hot. No, hotness refers to the kind of heat that we put out. Is it like a wildfire burning out of control, or is it like a campfire that draws others close to us for nourishment and protection? And interestingly, per molecule, a campfire is hotter than a wildfire. So my first book is a book on confidence and overcoming the poopy things that people might say to you. And people started is called How to Embrace Your Inner Hotness, because I've been in the beauty industry for 32, 33 years now. So, oh, you look hot, it's just kind of fun.
Hmm.
And people started calling me Hotness. And I am a normal looking, or I should say a normal figured woman. And so it just is all the funnier to introduce myself as Hotness because I am not what you would look at and go, oh, I wonder if she was a beauty queen. I have been a beauty queen, but you wouldn't think that. But I did the beauty queen thing because I thought it would be funny. Because if life is funny, it is just better.
You know what? That is so well put. It definitely is. It definitely is when it's funny. And you know, gosh, a couple of years ago, I had a guest ask me when it was the last time I laughed.
Mm, mm.
And you know what, Lita? I couldn't answer it.
Ooh,
I'm
ooh,
serious. I could not answer the question. I'm like, I really don't know. And they're like, when was the last time you literally broke down and just busted a gut laughing? No memory of the last
okay.
time.
So that makes me worried for you, but let me give you a free suggestion that I just okay. I'll just put it this way. I heard it on the internet, so we know it's true.
Yeah, and I'm a French model too.
Right, but I believed it and I liked it. And look, you just laughed right there.
Uh-huh.
But that watching cat videos has proven to be a stress reducer, and they make me laugh too, especially when they like bap their owner. So that's free for everyone. Go watch cat videos,
That is
and
good advice because I've watched a few of them and they are really funny.
if you're just feeling a little, but let's put a caveat in that. Let's not get addicted to the scrolling on our cell phones, because a lot of those that are listening, I imagine, have struggled with addiction because they're listening to a podcast on overcoming it. So let's just be aware we don't pick up other addictions, because too much time on your phone is actually bad for your brain. It doesn't let you be in a space of boredom, which is super important for human resilience, that we allow ourselves to be bored. Do
Oh,
you want me to
that's
explain that
interesting.
more?
That one I did not know.
Yes. Okay. So when you and I were young, Al, the human brain finished developing, meaning if I do this, this will happen, right? So that's why, like teenagers, puberty, that disconnects into teenage brain. So a 10-year-old is more able to assess A equals B in behavior and consequence than the teenage brain. And what is happening is that the brain is trying to figure out which neuroconnectors to put back in place, like which ones are true. So they kind of go through like this like puberty, right? Their brain's kind of going, which connections do I keep? And so that's why a lot of the studies about how bad addiction is during the teen years, those that have done that, they're going to have to do that extra work to logically, because that's a different part of your brain, to analyze something, because your feelings, your impulse is going to pull you into a place that you may have that neuroprocessor that's been damaged because of the addiction, or that you're an actual teenager. So the teenage brain is like a brain on drugs. That's what I tell kids all the time.
Wow.
Right?
Without the
So if
drug.
your brain is literally on a drug, but that's, teenagers get really obsessive. So do we when we're in addiction, and we can be addicted to drugs, sex, porn, narcissism, which I personally do not put narcissism as not necessarily a mental condition. I think it's a choice of selfishness, or as
Hmm.
the Bible puts it, the natural man. But anyway, being bored is super important, because when we were younger, because we had to be bored, what the brain does in boredom is it starts analyzing its situation. And then an idea might come like, what if I were driving right now and a chicken just came and hit my windshield? What would I do? And you laugh because you're like, chickens don't fly. But your brain still visualized what that looked like,
Yeah.
and it problem solved, right? So
Hmm.
I like to ask people this question: would you like to be hit by a train or run over by a car? Which I know, shot in the head or run over by a train. Which one would you like?
Are you asking me that?
Yeah, I'm asking that.
Oh, okay. Gosh, everything shot in the head, you wouldn't feel it.
Right. Now, obviously, I asked you a yes or no question. When we ask the human brain a yes or no question, or a binary question, which is in form of a yes or no question, meaning one or the other, your brain automatically visualizes what those two look like. So in our political thing right now, they're like, oh, do you want the fascist Trump, or do you want the good president? Right.
Hmm.
So they're letting you know by how they ask the question what answer you're supposed to give. That's another way of giving a binary choice, right?
Yeah.
So your brain will automatically visualize, well, I don't want to live under a fascist Hitler. And it automatically ties those all together, even if there's really no correlation.
Hmm.
So
Interesting.
obviously you don't want to be shot in the head or run over by a train, but because you visualized it, you picked the one you wanted the most.
Yeah.
So that's an example of how the brain will pick which way it has to go. But when you're bored, you actually start solving those problems before you ever get to them. So what if someone came up to you with a gun? What would you do? And then you get this huge cortisol response. Your brain starts firing. Your adrenaline might peak, right? Because your whole entire brain and psyche is involved in this. You're not even, no one's even near you with a gun. But we used to do this when we'd read books, when we would, talk to our friends. And now we get all of our impulse and problem solving by having it fed to us instead of imagining it.
Yeah.
And that's actually slowed down brain development to where the brain doesn't finish making all those neuroprocessing connections. And these are brains free of addiction until 25 or 26 years old. So what used to happen in our generation at 22 is now happening for the kids to 25 or 26, because they are not bored. Because the moment they're sitting in the doctor's office and they're like, okay, this is really boring. Do I read that magazine or that stupid magazine? Or do I just sit here and look at the fish? And, oh, I can't believe that Joey was mean to me, right? Like their brain starts
Mhm.
doing that. They never do that now. They just pick up their phone and get entertained.
Yeah. True
And that's
statement.
bad for your brain development.
The brain it is such an amazing organ. I mean, it really is, because I just got done finishing some training about
Mhm.
3 weeks ago to be a certified crisis and recovery coach. And the one
Awesome.
thing about this training is it's the brain first approach. And they taught a lot about the brain in the training, and just by even asking certain questions, how an individual can actually pull up stuff to help them get to where they want just by a certain question. And it sounds like just what you just said to me, right? You gave me a yes or no question. Instead, I analyzed it a completely different way.
Right.
And you are so spot on, I believe, with this boredom, because there are certain nights, usually I'm going 100 miles an hour all day long. Evening times, I finally shut myself down about 8 o'clock, just say, okay, it's me time.
Good.
It's
Yeah.
crazy what goes around in my head for that next hour.
Right. And we're giving people the idea, and I don't know if I totally put my finger on why, because I'm not a social scientist and I have like a job too, because I think it would be a very huge study to do. But my intuition on this from what I've observed and what I've learned is that people are easier to manipulate and to control if we are entertained. And so that this uptick of entertainment is, almost in and of itself, regardless of what the content is, a form of propaganda because you can create a lot of fear in people. And if you look at people throughout history, the only thing you had to do to get people to be controlled was to threaten the food source. I'm going to redivert the water. You might have, um, you know, um, a storm and people would pray to their God. They had all these different pagan religions all over the world had different ways that they would try to appease the gods of the different weather because it threatened their food source. But because we don't have a threatened food source, most of us, um, I should say most of those with a phone listening to this, because there's a lot of people who live in food scarcity, not only in the United States, but mostly around the world, right?
Mhm.
But once you threaten someone's food source, they will get very compliant. But now it's like once you threaten someone's entertainment, they will get compliant. Look what we did during COVID. And I can only imagine the havoc that wrecked because we're telling people if you feel uncomfortable, there's something wrong with you. If you feel a moment of fear, there's something wrong with you. If you feel awkward, oh, to our youth, we're telling them that must mean you're something different, when that is exactly what the normal brain feels like. We are going to go through any feeling that we suppress during the day. So I'm walking by the drinking fountain and somebody giggles, and you're a kid, kids automatically assume any room they walk into that it impacts them. The giggling could have been nothing to do with it, or it could have been about them, but their brain automatically interprets that they were giggling at them. And so they internalize that. And even though they respond like, oh, I'm cool, I'm just walking, right? Later that night when they're alone, that anxiety of, oh no, what happened? And so we're like, oh, here, oh, we can't have bad feelings. We can't have bad feelings. Oh, there's something wrong with Joey because they have bad feelings, when that's perfectly normal. That's one of the ways the brain helps to process emotions so that we become people who can emotionally regulate.
Mhm.
But if we never get to sit with our feelings of what if, we never get out of our comfort zone. And the sad thing is, people from abusive situations become very comfortable in those abusive situations. So their comfort zones is toxic, but their brain says, let's stay here.
Yeah. Yep. Agreed 100%. It's society has got us to where we're not allowed to feel all these emotions that God put inside of us. They're there for a purpose. And it's sad. I share this story every once in a while on a show. One of my past guests from a couple years ago, Janessa Brewer, out of Colorado, she said she does coaching. And she goes, one day her 6-year-old daughter taught her something very valuable. And she went on to share on the show, and she goes, my daughter is scared of thunder. So
Mhm.
every time it thunders, she cries. So a storm's rolling in and the thunder's really getting loud, and she looks over and her daughter's in the corner with her whoopee and she's just bawling. And she goes, stop, you're crying. There's
Mhm.
nothing to be afraid of. And she looked up at her mom and said, Mom, let me have my sad time.
Ah,
And she just started crying again. And her mom was like, oh my gosh, did she just say that to me? And
yeah,
she
out of the mouth
started
of babes,
processing.
right?
She started
Yeah,
processing, going, I am not allowing her to feel her feelings. If she's afraid of thunder, she has every right to be afraid of thunder. Let her feel it. And then see,
right. And that
that
is
was
actually building emotional resiliency, because is she, every time she has thunder and she doesn't die, over time, she will learn through an emotional reaction that it's going to be okay, or through time. But children have the most intense feelings of anyone because they don't have the analytical part of their brain to go, well, last time it thundered, I didn't die. The time before that, I didn't die. How many times have I heard thunder?
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so when we are like, oh no, little Sally's crying, here's your iPad. Little Sally never gets to learn that her feelings are not something to be afraid of.
Yes. Amen.
So let me get deep with this. Okay. So there are fears because we have a deep audience. I'm assuming the audience
Mhm.
listening right now, they've gone through hard stuff. So they're like, thunder.
Piece
I've
of cake.
had thunder in my life, right? Like, one time I was at a church and this lady goes, I just feel like I'm at the end of my rope. And I went, there's a rope? Like what? There's a rope? Like there's a rope out there? I want this said rope. So my husband, when I first married my husband, I came from an abusive childhood. I was molested, I was beaten, I was neglected. I was told I wasn't wanted, blah, blah, blah. Sad story, get a little harp out, right? So when I marry my husband, who is actually a functional human, pretty much a miracle. I'm going to give credit first to God because God told me, don't marry what you came from. And I started doing a lot in self-help and scriptural. Like whenever I read something, I'm like, does it match up with I know to be the nature of God? Now, the listener who's angry with God, just hear the half part I said. It's still going to apply because all truth goes to truth, right? But I don't want people to be like, she said God. I'm just very uncomfortable with that because that's okay. Because some people have used religion because narcissistic, power hungry sociopaths have always used whatever power structure they can to, and it used to be religion. Some people do it, but it used to be the only form of power was religion. But anyway, I'm giving a history lesson. So my point is this girl who'd had a damaged childhood had done a lot of work on herself. I now have married a functional human and it freaked me out. Now, my husband didn't know I was freaked out, but I felt very uncomfortable with his functionality. Like I would walk into our kitchen and he would have put the dish in the sink and I literally would either have a reaction of like, how blessed am I that my husband will put it in the sink instead of leaving it out until the bugs can come get it. Like one time my husband said, oh no, the dishes are going to rot. And I said, I happen to know it takes 7 weeks before the dishes get mold on them. Because anytime I left home, my family did nothing for the maintenance of the home. And so I knew exactly how long things took, like not even remembering to flush toilets. You know
Oh
what I'm
my
saying?
goodness.
Yeah, like my parents were hoarders, bless them, as they say in the South, right? So, but he was like functional in how he ran the house. And at one point it would kind of like, okay. And then my subconscious mind started freaking out. It's like, this is too good to be true. This isn't a real thing because I was so comfortable in dysfunction.
Yeah.
Right. And even though I'd done all this self work to have actually picked a good partner in life, right? My subconscious mind started freaking out and being like, you don't deserve this. You're not good enough for this. And I'd be like, okay, analytical mind, no, it's okay. He chose me. He stuck with me, like this kind of thing. And I would have all these really dark feelings with no input that my husband was causing this. And so my analytical mind would hold me back from being like, I'm not good enough for you to him, right? Or sabotaging the relationship. But yet I was having this tug of war within me. And I started having nightmares. So again, feelings we don't process become expressed somehow, right?
Mhm.
And I do have 2 siblings that are addicts. And so I'm very aware of that. I probably have the addict gene, and I'll tell a story about that if you guys want later. But I'm like, okay, I gotta, so I'm really like trying to control my actions and my reactions. Does that make sense? I'm
Yeah.
sure this is connecting with your audience.
Yeah.
Um, and I started having these nightmares that my husband died. And at first, I would wake up in a PTSD cold sweat, right? And I didn't know at the time that I had PTSD. I didn't get diagnosed till I was 36. But basically, from when I got diagnosed, I asked the therapist, well, what caused it? And they said, from what you've shared with us, just pick one. Just any of them would have done it. Again, lots of different abuse, lots and lots and lots, right? Yay me, I picked the wild card. So I started having these nightmares that my husband would die, and I would just wake up in this cold sweat and I would be panicked, just absolutely panicked. But then, because it was pre-cell phones, and my husband is somebody who needs to sleep and he had to get up at 5 in the military, I'd be really quiet about it and I would sit there in my board. I would sit there and I would be like, well, what if he died? Okay, he's right here. Okay, what if? And I started asking myself those scary questions. At first, I would just be panicked and then I would just cuddle up next to him and be like, but then as they kept coming, I started asking myself questions. I started leaning into those questions. And over time, and these continued for about 2 years, that I would have them maybe twice a month to once a month, but never less than once a month, and never more than probably 5 times a month. So, now I know it was like totally PTSD. I now know that my brain was totally freaking out to being in function, couldn't handle it. It was not used to it, even though that's what I wanted. And I leaned into that scenario of what if, and I started to make plans. Not, again, I'm not the one wanting him to die. So these aren't the kind of plans of where I bury him in the forest. These were the plans of how would I be financially prepared? How would I, right? And then how would I want to respond emotionally? And I started making those plans. So after about 2 years, the nightmares went down to like every 3 months, and then maybe another. And then I would just have them once in a while. And by the time I started having them once in a while, my brain had completely formulated a plan that when it'd wake me up, I'd go, it's okay. I've got a plan. Da, 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 da. Right? Not
Mhm.
okay, I want this, but okay, I've got this figured out. Again, sitting into that boredom of it. And as I've studied resiliency, because I find it fascinating, because one, I had to figure out, why am I okay? Why am I a functioning human? Right? Just for my own, like, I can look at the statistics to see that a girl that was molested from 2.5 to 14, that was, um, lots of bad things happening to her. Why is she okay? And it can't just be brain chemistry. It can't just be self-help books. To me, there's always going to be a spiritual component. And I definitely have had experiences with what I call my Heavenly Father. But whatever people's faith tradition, even Alcoholics Anonymous, brings in the higher power concept, because it's so important that we recognize that we uniquely have value despite what we have been through and in spite of what we've been through. So eventually, as my brain started sitting with that discomfort and I came up with a plan, when my husband actually did die, and I'm holding him in my arms, I responded in the way that I had prepared that I would respond. And then my husband came back to life, and I actually saw my husband's spirit come back into his body. It was a silvery, dark, but not dark, not like scary or anything like that. It was just not quite as silver I can even explain, right? And he
Mhm.
reanimated, came back to life, and I handled it incredibly well. And people are like, you are so strong, which I think is super annoying for people to tell you you're really strong, because then it kind of puts this idea that you have to be for them, right? But the thing is, I knew the truth. I was strong and dealing with this well because I had processed this how many times? 100 times, 500 times, 1,000 times. And to this day, I live with the fear that my husband will have another heart attack. But instead of it being the fear of freezing, it's the fear that made me proactive. It's a fear that made me take action. And financially, I will be fine. Emotionally, I will miss my husband, but I have already made the decision that I will be fine. And therefore, I can go forward in my life with the unknown. And that is what resilience is.
Yeah.
Is we're willing to see that the unknown could happen. We're willing to go into the unknown, but we take every single prior experience we have and go, I've existed. I've been able to make it through that. And you know what? I'm not a swearer, but I'm going to say it this way. Damn, we're awesome. Look at the hell that you have been through. And I'm saying this to the listener right now. Look at what you have gone through, the inner traumas of your childhood, the darkness of addiction, the losses, the price that is paid, and you're still here breathing. But it is the darkness, it is he who is poopy, it is that part of your brain that wants you to be comfortable that tells you you can't go forward. And that's a big lie.
Yeah.
When everything we can analyze and look at is like those nightmares. It was cold sweat terrifying to me, to almost cold and analytical in how I could handle it well, because I had imprinted a neural pathway from fear to capable.
Yeah.
And there is a
We,
part of my brain that I molded to literally deal with this fear.
yeah, because you tossed away those. I like to say that, I mean, what is it? We have 70 billion, I think, neurons in our brains, something like that.
Right.
We have the capability of unplugging any ones that we don't want and plugging them into something that's healthy, which basically it sounds like to me that's what you did throughout those
Yeah.
years. You just kept unplugging one and just kept plugging another one in. And it took some time to get there,
Yeah.
but
And
you
the
got
older
there.
our brain is, the longer it takes to make a new neural pathway. So one of the reasons that people with certain kinds of trauma, they really encourage them to deal with it before the age of 25, is because the brain hasn't solidified. So when I'm talking to kids, because I didn't have the opportunity to work on a lot of my traumas before the age of 25 or 22, right?
Mhm.
And so I know that I will live with a certain amount of PTSD symptoms, regardless of any amount of self work that I do. That's just the reality. Like, I have a scar on my chin, I have this funky scar on my elbow, right? It's just what my body is, and that's okay. And I'm going to guess that most of the listeners are sitting there being like, well, I'm 40, I'm 50, I'm 60, right? I'm past the age of my brain finish developing. And I dislike when they say it takes 30 days to a new habit. Okay, it takes 30 days to a new simple habit. Like, I have been brushing my teeth and my gums too hard. And now I'm going to try to work on doing it softer. And I'm going to be aware of that for 30 days. That's the kind of habit you can change in 30 days. The experience that I just shared with you, from feeling unworthy and incapable, those are pretty dark feelings.
Yeah.
In order to change the habit of I'm not worthy of good things in my life, which was what that was, it took me 2 to 5 years of conscious, hard work on it, and worth it.
Yeah.
With the death of my daughter, I have a daughter that passed away. I woke up on her 4th birthday of hard, hard work every second of every day, which I often tell people that grief could be my addiction. That is my drug. And you see a lot of people who are addicted to being a victim of their circumstances, be it a dead child, a traumatic childhood. Our society has encouraged people to be victims of things, and I don't think there's too many things that make me more mad than that, because we are meant to overcome, right? But staying on
Mhm.
point to what I'm saying is, we become addicted to these things, and I was addicted to this concept that I wasn't enough. And to overcome that, I was talking about the grief of my daughter,
Yeah.
that I had to overcome this label of grieving mother, and people wanted to give me a pass, or, whatever. It took me almost every moment of the day, I had to make a decision of how I was going to respond to that. For my 2 other children, that I was not going to have their childhood be, well, my sister died and we basically lost my mom, which ironically happened to me with my mother. She was in a car accident. A little boy died that was 2.5 years old, my same age. And that is why my mother always felt guilty having me, because a child had died. And why did she have one the same age?
Yeah.
So I knew the price of a mother checking out. So I didn't. And it was hard. It was so hard. And I woke up on the morning of my daughter's 4th birthday and I realized it was now a habit to be awesome.
Good for you.
But again, when we have gone through the peak of an experience, okay, I'm now sober. I now realize I don't want to be a victim of this. Fill in the blank, whatever it is. We have to start mapping out, how did I get here? So how do I map my way out of that? And then how do I build up my little successes? A week, 2 weeks. I was offered something. I turned it down. I walked away. I cut off that friendship for them trying to violate my sobriety, right? Whatever it is. And then we keep celebrating that. And the further we get, the more we can go, I'm not going to give up my year of sobriety for this.
Yeah.
My 2 years, my 3 years, how dare you try to get me to get away from that? To where, yes, you always have to be aware that you have the addiction gene. Like, I'm aware that I have PTSD. I don't enjoy fireworks. I have to be like, okay, we're going to listen to fireworks now, anytime there is a loud noise, I'm sharing with the audience, my little triggers, right? I will jump and people laugh at it and they don't realize that in me, it's going to be 20 minutes before my cortisol's calm down. And even though I don't have this outward projection of stress, because I know how to mask it,
Mm-hmm.
and that's probably not totally healthy, right? But I can say to myself that whole entire time, it's okay. It's all right. You're okay. Because look at all these millions and millions of loud noises you've heard, and you're okay, little brain. It's okay. It's
Yeah.
okay. It's okay. And it's the same thing, whatever the process you're having to overcoming being a victim, overcoming being an addict, you have to be working on, you are worth the work and the commitment that you have made. You are not only not broken because of your past. I believe that when we have overcome something, that should be a jewel in our crown that we're bragging about. Like, I overcame that. Like, that doesn't define me. Like, I have walked through the very fires of hell, and that is why I'm so hot today.
Yeah, absolutely. Because
Right.
it's not holding you back anymore. It's
Right.
definitely not holding you back. And like you said, it takes that time. I mean, a friend of mine, Dave DeRocher, who's the executive director of the Other Side Academy, he was on the show and he brought up this question. He goes, Al, who decides how long someone stays in recovery? And my brain's going, and I'm thinking, I don't know, the individual, the family, and this is what I just really started the show. And he goes, no, it's the insurance companies, 30, 60, 90 days. And he goes, so I know for a fact, no one's going to get well in 30 days, 60 days, 90 days,
Yeah.
6 months, 7 months, 8 months.
No.
It's a
No.
process. That's why
Yeah.
that's why their organization, it's a 2.5 year program.
Better.
2.5
Yeah.
years to because it takes at least 12, 13 months for now that brain to start being healthy again and firing different ways.
Right.
And with what you
Right.
shared, how you explained it, I went through 6 months of therapy in my mid-20s to learn how to control a very, very bad temper. I had a very, very short fuse. And one day I hurt someone. They're laying on the floor, curled up in a ball. And I'm going, what the heck am I doing? I
Mm.
don't want to be this type of individual. And it took 6 months for me to start understanding what we talk about at the beginning of the show, the choices, the resilience, the power of choices, to start learning how to make these different choices. However, it's also to recognize, like what you did, waking up in the PTS sweats and PTSD sweats and just so anxious, and he's laying right there, but yeah, and you just kept working at it, and pretty soon they started subsiding, and that's the exact same thing I did, and to this day, man, I have been pushed very, very close, especially in the depths of my ex-wife's addiction. When I started seeing those blinders coming on, to where
Mhm.
I couldn't see anything through my peripheral vision. It was only straight forward. That was my warning button right there. And I
Yeah.
recognized that warning button going, oh crap, I either need to get the heck out of here or I've got to go do something different because I'm heading down that dark tunnel and I do not want to be in that tunnel because I know what could happen to me.
Right. And that was resilience because you're like, okay, wait a minute. I already know where this goes.
Hmm.
To make a different choice. But the problem is that people are getting so much input about their choices outside of their inner gut, right? People you'll see this on social media all the time. People are like, I'm really upset, but I can't tell you what it is. Well, then, okay. So everyone's in there having this outward, oh no, I hope you're okay, right?
Hmm.
But what's really happening there is they are trying to get everybody else to help them self-soothe,
Yeah. Self medicate.
right? Well, it's an emotional validation. How many likes did that post get? How many of my friends agree with me? It's a way that we're not sitting in our board and making those choices, right? And when we really look at if we are in control of the choices that we are making, it's if all these different parts of our brain are firing together, the analytical, the feelings, the communication, right? How much of that are we bringing in to what's about to come out of our mouth, to what we're about to do with our hands? You hear people all the time being like, my truth, or I just need to follow my path, and I'm like, okay, but what does that mean? I just want to do what makes me happy. Okay, what does that mean? So a good story for this is when we were in grief group after our daughter died, there was a man that is a member of the Church Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Very, what you would imagine that guy to be. I think he probably wears a tie more days of the week than not. Just very and very, you know, probably doesn't have a lot of friends outside of his faith circle, right? Just very kind of tight and conservative, whatever, right? So everyone can have a picture of him in his mind. There's another young man and his daughter, her, I think it was a little baby that died that was just slightly older than my daughter had died, or slightly younger, something around there. And I was in a wheelchair at the time. So one thing that's really fun about being in a wheelchair is you can say whatever the crap you want to people, because you're in a wheelchair. And I really enjoyed that. Um, just like, what are you going to do? Kick me?
Yeah. Right.
Just gonna hurt your feet because right? So, and then another young man that was in there, according to how he dressed, and I've lived in DC, so I'm pretty good at being able to know when I see a gang member. And the fact that 3 people in his family had died violently in the last 18 months. And this was here in Utah. So I'm pretty sure you'd have to go out of your way, like by being in a violent gang, to have 3 people in your family die violently. This isn't Chicago, right? And the way he was dressed and presented himself, I'm like, gang. And so we're all in there, we're all talking. And one day, the cute little LDS religious dad says to the young man who's feeling sad, he goes, just do whatever makes you happy. And I was like, whoa, put my hand up. And I said to the young man, I said, what do you do when you want to feel happy? Like if you're feeling sad, what do you do? And he goes, oh, I go F a girl. But he said the actual word. And the father was really shocked because that man has probably never heard that word outside of a movie, you know,
Yeah.
which he may not even watch those kind of movies. He probably turns them off because, smoke came from his TV. And I can make fun of him because I'm a member of that faith too. So I can make fun of it, you because, they're cute, right? And he's completely horrified because he just told him, go do whatever makes you happy. And the young man gave him his answer of how he interpreted the words he said. And then I asked him, I said, what do you do when you want to feel happy? He's like, I go float a boat down the creek with my son. And I'm like, oh, that's good. That doesn't hurt anyone. And then I'm like, to the young man, I'm like, do we think we could think of things that could make us feel happy that don't hurt other people? And he's like, well, how does that hurt her? That's what her blah, blah, blah is for.
Yeah.
And I was like, actually, no, that's not why her vagina was made, you know? And I had to like walk him through that would hurt her because women actually interpret the act of sex as love. And if you're just doing it as a psychological release for an endorphin kick for a climax, not really what she thinks it means. And see how we've just kind of defined things differently here,
Yeah, absolutely.
right? And so having to help them walk through, like, the words coming out of your mouth may not mean what you think they mean, and they may not be following your bliss or following your happiness. When you are in addiction, it feels really good. That's just doing what makes you happy, right?
Well, it makes you happy because you're not feeling the sorrow that's, I mean, all that is the Band-Aid anyway.
Right. But you know, that whole language around just do whatever you want
Hmm.
creates a very toxic environment for those of us that either have to struggle with addiction or entitlement or selfishness or grief or being a victim. So basically, I just covered all humans.
Yep. All of
I
us.
All of us have gone through some of those things. And so we have to look at, what am I emotionally responding to? Why am I emotionally responding to that? And remember, your subconscious brain's job is to keep you comfortable. So if you're sitting in a pile of poop, your subconscious brain will go, well, I guess it's kind of warm here. Your nose will literally get you to not smell it and you'll become nose blind. Your whole entire brain will convince you, if you think you're stuck in that poop, that it's a good place to be.
Yeah. That's what our subconscious is there for.
Right. And so we have to look at it and go, maybe I need to make my subconscious uncomfortable and push against that by analyzing, assessing, and communicating properly where we're going, which takes a ton of effort. And your brain will rebel and you might have nightmares. And then you go, oh no, I'm not going in the right direction because I'm feeling uncomfortable, because I'm not only having good feelings. Our society is telling us a very toxic lie that we are supposed to feel comfortable, good, and happy, and excited, and energetic all the time.
Yeah, that's impossible.
Well, I think most people, most healthy people, spend 80% of their day feeling uncomfortable. I'm a speaker for my job. I get up on a stage and people clap for me. Little secret, I've already shared, I have PTSD. Guess what I don't like? Loud, sudden noises.
Noises.
I don't like being clapped for. But people looking at that are like, ooh, I want that glamorous life. And the whole entire time I'm up there going, okay, smile appropriately because they're trying to be nice. Okay,
Hmm.
smile. I'm putting my hands on my chest to be like, it's okay, because my heart is beating. And I'm reminding myself to make a pleasant smile as I say, thank you, thank you, thank you, right?
As you go up.
But yeah, right. But other people look at that and go, look at the glamour. I want that. But to be a speaker, it's 55 minutes of on stage that I love, connecting with people, seeing my audience light up, that person right over there that just got it and you can tell just had the muse of inspiration hit them, the spirit, whatever, right? Like
Yeah.
a difference was made. And 6 years later, they message me and they tell me that that speech changed the direction of their life. Ooh, like I love that. To put up with 5 minutes of a cortisol hit that really irritates me because they're clapping for me. And about for every 1 hour on the stage, I'll probably spend 15 to 20 preparing that speech. And so people are like, Leta, your life is so glamorous. Um, you're making an assessment off the 5 minutes I don't like.
Yeah.
And I think we're guilty, all of us, of doing that because we're comparing ourselves to other people instead of sitting with what is my purpose? Who am I? And none of those questions can be answered if we haven't answered the fundamental question that, yes, I am enough.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, I figured that out even, during again the depths of my ex-wife's addiction. When I fasted and at the end of the fast you say the prayer and I'm listening and I kept hearing the word forgiveness. And I'm like, Father, you think I'm gonna forgive her? Absolutely not. No way. And that word just kept hitting me, forgiveness, constantly throughout every single day. And I don't really know if I was in my boredom that you spoke about. Just one day, it's like somebody slapped me upside the face, and I went, "Oh my gosh, it's not her I'm supposed to forgive, it's me. I've had this wrong the whole flippin' time." And once I was able to work on doing that, that's when everything started shifting again.
Mm, yeah.
So much, and I like to even say in some of my talks, we love people, right? I mean, my mom even told me once, "My gosh, you love a lot of people. You tell people I love you all the time." It's like, it's because I do, you
That's
know?
why I love you so much, Al.
That's
The
why
first
I
time
love
I
you.
met you, I loved you
Yeah.
too.
Because I love the people that I'm around because they're very inspirational like yourself, and they have huge hearts, and I it's not that they get life totally, but they get life, if you
Mm,
understand what I mean. And it's hard for any of us to really love our spouse, our partner, our kids, other individuals if we don't have that in for ourselves. We have
100%.
to have it here because if we don't, we're not giving them the full us.
Right.
There's
In
no
fact,
way.
my first book, I actually make the statement, How to Embrace Your Hotness, a little plug there, right? I say that you can only love to the level you love yourself, and you cannot give to others what you do not possess.
Mhm,
So, one of the main stories is that my grandmother would tell me I was ugly and that nobody could love me. And of course, as a child, I believed that. But I realized as an adult, my grandmother wasn't saying that to me because she hated me. She was saying that to me because she had a very narrow idea of what made a woman acceptable and beautiful. And I came out the wrong color. I'm too dark for her opinion, because you're supposed to be blonde and blue eyed. And I am a little bit ethnically ambiguous that people always ask me where my people are from. I'm just a mutt, My dad's his people are mostly Welsh. So, you know, Catherine Zeta Jones, by the way, is Welsh, and she always plays Hispanic roles. So that's why I explain it to people. They're like, "There's no way you don't have something in you." But anyway,
my mom says
I,
I'm goulash.
yeah, goulash. There you go. Well, you look like Ukrainian or Russian to me.
Actually, English and, Sweden, which is
Okay,
kinda crazy because I've got dark skin, dark
I know it's so
complexion.
funny. There you go. See, so northern European is what I was thinking, but a little too far east.
Yeah,
Anyway, but who cares and who knows, right? Like, why
yep,
do we care? But my grandmother did. And I'm also 5'9", and to her, anything over 5'5" was just gross. And there's nothing I could do to be lighter or smaller. There's no amount of not eating that would make me under 5'5" when I'm 5'9". It's just what
mhm,
it is. And so I felt like I was a throwaway. And I had to learn to answer the question, am I of value? Even if I'm not blonde, even if I'm 5'9". And it's so stupid now, but as a child, that was a really big question for me. And grandma was simply trying to help me minimize my expectations, by letting me know that a man would only marry me because he needed somebody to raise his kids and to be a good cook and and a good cook
yeah,
and house cleaner. Like that was the only reason that would happen. So it was her prejudice, her limited view of life that did something that was pretty harmful to me as a kid but it wasn't out of a lack of loving me. But the truth is, her level of love, and this is where everybody just kind of needs to hold their heart. The people that loved you the most, that should have loved you the most, if they didn't love themselves, they couldn't do a good job at it. Right? And
Yeah.
that's just fundamentally unfair because, of course, we'd all love to have Donna Reed be our mom. I mean, can make a wonderful dinner and a nice heeled pump all day long with a cheerful smile. We'd all love to have that, right? But
Mrs.
most
Cleveland.
of us got humans for our mother, not a sitcom character.
Hmm.
And our mothers and our grandmothers and our fathers and all of that were people with their own stuff. And we can either be upset and angry and vindictive, or we can start to look at the truth and start to analyze what was their trauma, what was unresolved for them, so that we can, they use the term generational trauma now, right?
Hmm.
And I like some of it, but some of it I think is poopy because they're like, oh, if your grandmother had it, it's in your gut and you're never going to be able to get over it. Excuse me, I can have a good poop and get over that. I am not responsible or liable for their stuff, but I do get to analyze and assess the fact that they didn't do as good a job as I might have wanted or deserved, but that does not diminish my value. That is simply life giving me my homework. If there's something bad that has happened to you, if something that wasn't enough from somebody that was broken, that is not your crutch. That is not your excuse. That is your homework. Get to work on it.
Yeah. Amen. Because you've said a few things that really bug you when people say it, and I've got a pet peeve too, is when I hear people say, I'm too old to change. This is how I've been all my life. Oh my gosh, that just sets something off inside of me. Because I have spent the last 15 years changing, and I will continue to change until God calls me home. I will continue to work on being a better person, and I've said this on the show many, many times. When it comes to bettering yourself, there is no finish line.
Amen.
There's
And more
goal.
than that, I believe that we are, if you believe in energy or a God, that matter, that energy is eternal.
Mhm.
I believe it's in the form of my body and it's probably about 5'9", right? You know, I'm who I am, my spirit, right? I mean, I
Yeah.
saw my husband's spirit and it fit, you know, like it fit him, right?
Mhm.
So I believe in my faith tradition that death is merely the beginning of learning. And I heard this from Egyptian theology, and I've decided that I think it's true that the mother goddess, you know what she's doing?
Mm-mm.
That when we die, she takes us into her bosom, right? And helps us basically unpack all of our poop. And that's what
Wow.
she's busy doing. And I was like, yes, yes, that is exactly what the mother energy is doing. Cause, you know, God, the guy is like, go learn. Come on, go do stuff, go learn. And then whatever we need to process to live in that light, our mother helps us because that's what I do for my kids.
Yeah.
What
Well,
a
that's
healthy
what
mother
moms
does.
do. Most
That's
moms.
what we do. And
Yeah.
I have a pretty cool career, but there's nothing that I am more proud of than I have raised functional, thriving humans.
Yeah.
And the buck stopped with me. The buck stopped with me. There is no generational trauma in my children. They are a little traumatized that their mother talks for a living. That is a little bit traumatizing, right? But you know, they did not get beaten, they did not get deprived, they were not abused. And the thing they're going to have to be in therapy for is that I was on them as a mom. And I was like, tell me what you're feeling, tell me what you're thinking, right? And I'm really proud of that. And I think if for no other reason that we have to overcome our crap is so that we can eventually look ourselves in the mirror. And if we still have little people in our lives, to make it right for our children or our grandchildren or to be accountable, to go back to people and say, I could have done better. And I give credit to my grandmother that at 97 years old, she apologized to me.
Wow.
And the cool thing is, I'd already forgiven her. So I didn't wait all those years resentful that grandma had said poopy, poopy, poop things to me. And those are just the funny ones that I shared with you. I wasn't seeking her approval or validation to live a healthy life, right? She wasn't my energy to overcome. She was something that I had just, okay, that's her.
Yeah.
And if I had waited, like as it, I could have been completely validated in my, it's not fair that grandma did this to me. It's not fair that that man that chose to molest me did that to me. But the reason you brought up forgiveness, we have to forgive ourselves, but we also just have to let, I like to describe it as letting them to releasing them to the wild.
Good way of putting it. Yeah.
You know, they get to go live in their forest and I get to live in my forest, and their forest ecosystem doesn't affect my forest, right?
Yep.
And if their ecosystem is affecting you, you've got some work to do.
Yeah. Yeah. And it took me, gosh, it took me into my mid 50s because I had an issue with my dad. And it
Yeah.
took me into my mid 50s before I finally stood up to him and just said, look, this is my life. I'm living it the way I want to live it, not how you want to live it. You've already lived yours and you're still living yours. If you want to stay there, stay there. I'm not.
One of the things I'm going to bring up with God when I meet him is when I heard that most people, their midlife crisis, which is in their 40s or 50s, of their unresolved childhood trauma comes out at that age. I think God should have done that in our 20s, you know, so we could have it all done before we make babies. But that's just one of the things I'm going to have him explain to me why he did that.
Yeah.
Like, seriously? You know, like the other one is, why does estrogen make women fat? Why'd he do that? When we are judged by our appearances, why didn't he make it where it like makes us have a really tight tummy? Like, that was bad planning. You know what I'm saying?
Well, there's a reason behind it because he's perfect, right? He's
Well, I don't get it. So these are my big theological questions that I am not okay with at this point.
I love it. I love it.
I mean,
You know,
some people are worried about why does God let unfair things happen in the world? I've already answered that one. Asked and answered is to help us learn, right?
that's yeah, yeah.
But why does estrogen make me fat when I'm the one who's supposed to have babies? Fundamentally not okay with me.
Yeah, yeah. We need to have a serious talk.
Yes. I mean, I'll be like front row in heaven. I'll be like, excuse
Yeah.
me, I've got some big questions. Okay. Not why was there a Hitler, but why was there this?
I can picture you already, Lita. You're going up, you're putting his arm around, going, "We need to have a talk. Do you got 5 minutes?"
And
Yeah.
Heavenly Mother going, now, Leta,
Yes.
Leta.
Yep. Oh my gosh. It's always a pleasure to be around you, Lita. And I if I remember right, I said this in our first take on the show. I met you at a networking group and you was doing your makeup stuff at the time, and I think it was up in Cottonwood Heights, and you got up and you was speaking about something, and I still didn't even really know what I wanted to do with my life at the time. I had just lost my job of 24 years. I was still figuring out who Al Richards wanted to be because I realized he was not the person I thought he was the majority of my life, and I did not want that person anymore. I wanted to become something different and better. And I remember you got up and spoke, and I don't remember what it was about, but I'm like, my gosh, that woman's energy is flipping amazing. And I was just learning about gathering other people's energy and feeling the power around them and the love and the strength. And I just got to share it. You gave that to me from the first time that we met. And I mean, it felt like I had known you for years. And I find that to be the case with a lot of people in my life now, this past 15 years, is I can meet someone for the very first time and it's like they've been my friends forever. And it's because of the energy and the love, the kindness that they admit. And I just want to say you did that for me. So thank you. And I know you did not know you did that, However, I'm letting you know now.
Well, I'm doing a big heart at you, and I'm super honored. And you want to know my secret of where it comes from?
Where?
I have done so much work on me that if you don't like me, it's okay. So I'm just going to show up as me.
There you go.
And the irony is that so many people are going about their life trying to get people to like them, accept them. And the truth is, you have to like you first.
Yeah,
And I have just been through so much hell that I decided it was not worth hiding who I was anymore.
it's not.
And I do not need anyone else's validation to feel good about how I show up for me or for anyone else. And another way we could say that is the more that we live in the truth, we reflect goodness. And I know that I do that. So I didn't know that I did that for you, but I know I reflect goodness because I've worked very hard on that. And
Yeah,
that is something that I believe that whatever darkness we have been exposed to, we are entitled. And I use that word on purpose because it's there for our taking. We are entitled to the equality of light. And that when we go through hard things, that is not our excuse or our anchor. That is actually our wings.
absolutely. Now that I got goosebumps because that is 100% spot on.
Mhm. And
Yeah,
he who is poopy tells us if you have been in the gutter, you are broken. If you have been rejected, you are unloved. You are never going to be enough. Literally, I would challenge, and if I could like plead with anything that anybody gets from this, that when they start to learn to recognize the voice of good and the voice of poopy, and the voice of poopy tells you you're not enough. And whatever the voice of poopy is saying, it's probably the opposite that's true.
yep. I had a good friend tell me something about 4 years ago. Matter of fact, he's the guy I got out of the church at age 13 and I couldn't remember how to fast. He's the guy I called up and said, "Hey, I don't remember how to fast. Can you help me here?" And I was telling him, I says, I says, "Brother, I think God's mad at me." And he goes,
Oh,
"God's not mad at you." And he said pretty much what you just said, Lita. He goes, "Everything that's good is God. Everything that isn't or bad thoughts, it's the opposition because
right.
the opposition wants to keep you down here."
Yep.
So when you hear these things and you work on yourself, it doesn't happen overnight. We've talked about that throughout the show. It takes time, but if you continue to work on it, you start making these other neurons stronger and stronger. They start binding, they start connecting stronger. Before you know it, you're going to be this far.
Right.
And a good example of that, a guest on my show 3 years ago came on who battled porn addiction, was out of town on a business trip, found a bridge, and he was going to commit suicide. And he comes from a very LDS family. And he's like, I can't do this. And he said a prayer before he's getting ready to jump off this bridge.
I'm glad he prayed, you
Right?
know?
He prayed
Yeah.
before, and he says he all of a sudden he heard this voice going, "Why are you not celebrating the days you did not use?" Because they use the same type of language.
Right.
And he stopped and started thinking about it. And he goes, "Yeah, I've gone 3 days before. Oh my gosh, I've gone 2 weeks before." That prayer saved that man's life because the opposition almost pushed him to the very edge of thinking he could not beat this addiction. And he did. He started celebrating the days that he did not use. And before he knew it, he was 1 year in. Before he knew it, he was 3 years in. Then he was at 5 years in. And it was that celebration and that work of just continue to celebrate instead of knocking yourself down. And I think a lot of people, I know a lot of people in the recovery, because I watched my ex-wife go through it, continuously beat herself up. And all she was doing was digging that hole deeper and deeper. And I wasn't helping as a spouse because if she went 30 days, it should say I went 30 days. I'm like, yeah, who cares? You've done that before. Because I was lost as well.
Right. Right.
Oh,
Right.
so I'm not
And
making
we all have
excuses.
that critic that says perfection is only good that the only goal is perfection.
Yeah,
And really, it's meant to be messy. It's
it
meant
is.
to be hard because that's where the gratitude comes from. That's where the joy comes from.
Where the blessings come from.
Right. But I think about that man on the bridge, and you know what's so cool about that? Who taught him to pray?
It was family because he came from a very LDS family.
So who gave him that habit? The
Parents.
only reason he thought to do that was
Hmm.
because whatever failings his parents might have had, I don't know his family. I don't know anything, right? I just know what you told me.
Yep.
They gave him a habit that saved his life. And so
Yep.
when I meet
Absolutely.
someone that doesn't come from a home that taught them the basics of you're a child of God, you are loved, you are worthy, pray, read scriptures. If that's all a parent did, they did a good job. Because that, when the dark times come, that's what will pull them out, is that habit to fall back on. Oh, I'm a child of God. Oh, I'm worthy of good. Oh, I can pray and ask for God's help. Because someone who wasn't raised in a home that taught him that would not think to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And we do have to work on ourselves.
Mhm.
However, we cannot do it alone. And when I mean we can't do it alone, I'm talking a higher power. And for me, my higher power is God. Other people I know that don't believe in God, but they do have a higher power, and that works for them. As long as you have a higher power, something has to help you along because God's not going to do it all for us because we've got to make the steps. And as long as we're making those steps, He'll start helping us. He'll throw us some the rope. He'll
Well,
throw us
as a
some rope
friend of
here
mine
and
says,
there.
as a friend of mine says that God is a gentleman,
Yeah, there you go.
right? And I love that because he's never going to force himself. And again, those are those big questions that people are like, why me? And I'm saying get out of the why me into the what if, because as long as we're in the victim mindset, we are not creating those new pathways
Hmm.
and that communication. But if you do need to whine to God. He can take it,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah. Yep.
But I just love how we've been able to like kind of hit this whole circle of it's all about what you're choosing to focus on, what thoughts you're doing. All of those thoughts are going to lead to what we're calling resilience, right? Being intentional. Like, why am I thinking this? Is it true? Will help your brain to go, nope, yep, nope, yes. And doing that, if it takes 30 days, God bless you for figuring it out in 30 days, because that's only for simple habits. But we're kind of giving everyone permission to have the process be messy for a long time. And that's okay. Not only is there nothing wrong with you, but that's how you're going to connect to the next person. You
Hmm.
work on you. And if your podcast was all about, yeah, 30 days to healing, it wouldn't have the following that it has because it would come across so trite and patronizing.
Yeah.
But because you're talking about this is hard, people are like, okay, yeah, okay, now you're talking my language, right? And I talked about dealing with one fear that I had taking me 5 years. And it wasn't even a realistic fear at the time. There was no reason to think that my husband had any health problems. It was simply my subconscious mind being like, this is too good to be real. You can't have this.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
It takes time and life is hard and it is messy. And that is where the joy comes from. That is
Mhm.
where the happiness is. That is where the peace comes from. Only when we've been through the darkness do we get that bright, shining, amazing, glorious light.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And
And
there's a
it's
lot of people who just live in the shades of dawn and think that that is the sunlight.
yeah, it's not even close.
They don't know, but they can see what they're doing, so they must be okay.
Yeah.
They know.
En- Enjoy the journey, people. Just enjoy the journey. Go along with it, man. It's just like jumping on a tube going down a river. Just just enjoy it. You're gonna hit rapids, you're gonna hit bushes, you're gonna hit a rock. Just enjoy it.
Yeah, because what we're here to learn, and it's a big job, but
Yeah.
um, we need every single one of us. Let's do it.
Amen. Well, Leta, my gosh, we've gone into an hour, a little over an hour. Thank you so much. And I would like you to throw out some plug on your stuff. So you've written some books. You've been a bestseller of two, I believe.
Yeah.
How
Yeah.
can people find your books and what are the names of them?
So my name, Leta, Leta Greene, like the color with an E on the end. You can find me on social media with same name. I'm Leta Greene, aka Hotness. I share goodness on there. And then my website where you can get your books. And if you're local, we can meet up or you can pay shipping or whatever. But I have a unique name, so I'm pretty easy to find. Green has never, people never heard of that. No, I'm just teasing. Leta.
I actually worked with a couple greens. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I was making a joke because I think I'm funny. I'm like, yeah, you know. But yeah, Leta, Leta Greene, like the color with an E on the end. They can find my website, my social media, and just know that AK Hotness is a part of it. So
I love it. I
yeah.
love it. Is there anything else you'd like to share before we sign off?
Well, I just want the listener to know that I actually really respect when people are doing the homework and listening to this podcast and doing this kind of stuff. Don't let the voice of poopy tell you you're not worth the work because whatever demons you fight, thank God that you have the armor to fight them.
Yeah, very good. Amen. Love that. Again, Leta, thank you so much for coming on the show again. And we will both keep our fingers crossed that everything goes nice and smooth.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this conversation was totally different than the other one, I think, but that's
Yeah,
just roll. I'm just real, you know?
yeah. Well, and that's what I love about you too, because you are real. And I have learned to be that way myself. And if people don't like it, that's their issue. But at least you know where you stand with me. And I'm not there to hurt anyone. I'm not there to stand above anyone. It's just I am who I am.
Life's not scripted, so why should we be?
Absolutely. Well, guys, thank you again. Thank you to all our listeners, all our guests, all our past guest hosts or past sponsors. And, I'm going to give a little shout out to Red Barn Academy out of Farmington, guys. Thank you so much. They just came in as one of our sponsors for our October Healing Utah Success Summit that our team is working very hard to plan and get ready for. It's going to be an incredible event. We've got 6 speakers that are coming on. And yeah, you definitely, if you guys are interested, reach out to me on Messenger and I'll tell you how to get the tickets. And you should see us on Good Things Utah here in about another week as well. It's again, thank you to everyone. I love and appreciate you. And remember this, addiction is giving up everything for one thing, and recovery is giving up one thing for everything. We're out.